Welcome back, everyone. It has been quite the hectic week. This is Pocketables' weekly news roundup, number 13, which seems appropriately foreboding as far as some of the non-technical news has been this week. However, that's not what we're here for. We're here to talk about some of the good and some of the confusing things that are going on in the technical side of the world. So our big headline item, this comes from AMD, is going to be that Ryzen 5000 is here. Now, this is a big deal. AMD's Ryzen architecture, Zen 1, Zen 2, 2 Plus, and now Zen 3 have generally been competitive with Intel's aging Skylake refreshes. But not necessarily outright better across the board. And that's actually what we're seeing here. There's still one, maybe two scenarios that the application really is just coded to do things that are only available on Intel's architecture, things like AVX2 and AVX 512 instructions. But outside of that, across the board, the Ryzen 5000 series chips are faster. Full stop. It has been a long time since we've seen a clean sweep on a CPU architectural change like this. Although this one is a bit less, how do I want to put this, surprising than the last time we saw this. The last time we saw someone make a clean sweep, that's it, we win, change was actually Intel. 14 years ago, which seems like just yesterday. I remember being excited to get one of these in a new laptop, was Core 2. So the Core 2 Duo chips were Intel finally putting to bed the netburst architecture that they had limped along with for years and just could not keep up with AMD's architectures of the time. And AMD continued to be relatively competitive, but it was Intel's show at that point, as it were. Now, obviously, both companies are capable of making similar missteps. The Bulldozer architecture from AMD was a flop. The NetBurst architecture from Intel was just terrible. It ran hot. It ran slow. It would actually underperform the Pentium 3s that preceded it. So it's certainly been a bit of back and forth, and now it's AMD's turn to be on top outright. Intel's not taking this laying down. We're going to see Intel's new Rocket Lake architecture hopefully soon. But even if they pull off a 20% increase in IPC like AMD did, they're going to be back at parity. It's not going to be Intel's on top. And I'm actually kind of content with this to be the way things are, the back and forth, because when both companies are doing well and competing with each other, as the consumer, we win. We get better processors and we get better pricing on them when the market is competitive. Speaking of Intel, this week they launched ZMAX. This is basically a second GPU for some of their mobile systems, although I've heard rumors it's also going to be on a PCIe add-in card as well. They've taken the same GPU die that is going in their thin and light laptops, and it's allowed it to be sold as a separate GPU as well. And they're doing this so that you can combine the two effectively. And we're not seeing something like we've seen from NVIDIA and AMD with Crossfire or SLI. We're seeing this being touted as a compute and a content creation application. The ZMAX chip does have its own frame buffer and is going to outperform the integrated graphics that it's related to, but not by a huge margin, since it's basically the same chip with a clock boost, its own thermal headroom, and its own memory. It's not any increase in execution units or anything of that nature. Now, Intel is touting this for various photo and video editing tasks. They're saying Two of these chips can work independently on pictures. They can do multiple video transcodes simultaneously. There is statements that they're going to be working on a unified driver to allow both to work together on a single video transcode process as well. Intel's fixed function video hardware is fairly good. I'm not sure I'd say it's as good as NVIDIA's, but it's also very well supported, since it's built into every non-HEDT Intel chip, all the way from the lowest atoms up to the biggest 10900K on the desktop. There's good incentive to support it in software. So this will be interesting to see how this plays out. I'm actually kind of excited about this, because one thing that I have seen in the past is there were various things, I believe Intel called it the VCA, which basically had 3 CPUs on a PCI Express card and was used for video production environments. And that's the kind of environment that it really looks like these ZMAX chips are targeted at, especially if they scale up in any kind of parallel fashion. Even if they don't, at 25 watts, if they put 4 of these or 6 of these on a single PCI Express card, well, if each one can handle 2 video streams, now I have a single card that handles 12 video streams, and it's a drop-in option. That's, as long as it's well supported, going to be very appetizing for companies like Netflix. On a slightly less focused technical note, something interesting I saw this week. I don't know how many of you are familiar with a company called Harbor Freight. They're relatively large here in the US. They tend to sell relatively acceptable quality tools targeted either at homeowners or entry-level professionals. That's not to say that they're bad, and some of them do quite well, but they're not showing up on the tool truck, which actually is kind of a good thing some days. But that's besides the point. We're not talking about any of their tools. What we're talking about is they are now carrying Genai Smart Stuff. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Smart bulbs, smart outlets, Wi-Fi cameras, that kind of stuff. Not the kind of things that I expected to see to show up at Harbor Freight anytime soon, although, full disclosure, I worked there in 2008, so I'm not entirely surprised to see some of it. They used to carry old analog NVR camera systems back then, so seeing them potentially phase those out in favor of this equipment with things like Wi-Fi doorbells and outdoor Wi-Fi cameras is certainly a reasonable move, and it looks like the light bulbs and the smart plugs are along for the ride. I have not interacted with any of the Genai stuff, but it looks relatively well priced. The bulbs are a bit more than I would like them to be, in the $15 per range for the color bulbs, but the smart plugs are reasonably priced. And one thing that I do expect to see, since this is Harbor Freight, is periodic 25% off coupons where you can purchase these things at a discount. Big benefit for Genai, assuming that this partnership goes both ways, is that Harbor Freight is going to potentially act as a point of sale and, physical location you can go to get these things replaced or repaired as is necessary. I love my Seng LED stuff, but my only recourse when a bulb burned out was to, send them an email and go through the RMA process, and they did fantastic at that. But if I could have just driven 5 minutes to Harbor Freight and say, hey, my bulb, which has an X-year warranty, and, here's the receipt, just died. It's being used in an indoor fixture, so there's nothing weird going on, and walked back out with a new bulb, would have been a faster experience, to say the least. So I'll have a link to some of Genai's stuff on Amazon. It's about the same price between the two, and Harbor Freight doesn't quite have it in stock in some of the stores. And I'll also include a link to the Harbor Freight stuff directly as well, so you can see what they will and won't have in the store. Stadia seems to be growing up some as a gaming platform. It is now allowing sharing games with family members. This is not a new feature. This feature has been in Steam for a while. This feature, existed on Xbox and PlayStation 4 from day zero. I mean, anyone could sit down and play the game with the disc in the console. So this is Stadia finally catching up to something on the streaming side. I think it might be too little too late. As far as I'm concerned, Stadia is on borrowed time. The whole repurchasing of games thing hasn't pushed them to fast adoption for much, but it is good to see them continuing to try. I don't wish them any ill will, but I do think that their model needed to be different in order to truly succeed. YouTube is finally restoring HD performance over cellular networks. Now, I'm going to admit, I don't watch a lot of YouTube on my phone to have caught this when it happened back in, I believe, March. But when everyone started working from home and relying more and more on internet connections, even those LTE connections, one of the decisions that was made, and they weren't the only ones that did this. I know Netflix reduced streaming quality as well, was to lock mobile connections to 480p. And YouTube is no longer defaulting to 480p. They're no longer locking people there. So you should be able to watch your YouTube videos in whatever quality your network can manage over cellular again. A final one from Google. They've been on the software side a couple of times this week. And this one I'm hoping they strike out on. Google is testing putting editing features from Google Photos behind a paywall. And they appear to be doing this to try and incentivize people to purchase that Google One subscription. I don't think that this is going to go over well. I think there's plenty of other photo editors available for Android that people might like more than having to pay Google Photos for this. I wasn't particularly surprised when they introduced the physical photo book ordering subscription service, where you could order and get your pictures printed out, because who wants to print those at home? Photo printers are terrible things to maintain. But this doesn't seem as appealing to me. Now, some people who pay for additional storage aren't even going to notice this. If it's rolled into Google One and you're already subscribing there, congratulations, you're going to have the features all anyway. But anyone new who doesn't have those features is going to see that and go, well, hey, look, here's a free photo editor. And I think Google may be overreaching with this particular decision. There are plenty of other ways for them to monetize things, and they certainly make their money in advertising. I would have been less bothered if, they raised the prices on Google Drive by $1 across the board. Whatever money they make from this Google Photos experiment, I think they're going to find they lose as many users who would have purchased the service anyway. So, but, I don't have an MBA. I'm not some super market analyst for them. So maybe I'm wrong. And maybe this is the end of free photo editing in Google Photos. To be blunt, I never used it anyway. Once again, it was one of those things that there's other better editors out there. And I personally preferred to bring my photos onto my laptop if I wanted to edit them. As always, there's going to be links to all of these articles. As far as Pocketable stuff is concerned, we've got a couple of exciting things coming up soon. Actually, here we'll grab this one. So we'll have an unboxing for this monitor. Should be live on Monday. This is the Viotech P16C Link or LinQ. I still haven't gotten clarification on how I'm supposed to pronounce that. This is a USB-C powered monitor. I was actually just using this as my feedback screen during recording here a minute ago, using my laptop's Thunderbolt port to power it. So we've started reviewing it already. There'll be our first look available for that on Monday. And we have started testing on the Okio cams. I actually have access to a new version of their app that's going to be available in the next few weeks, and we are going to have our review going live with that probably third week of November. So with all of that said, I want to thank our patrons as well as anyone who uses our Amazon affiliate links. It is support like that that helps make content like this possible. I also want to thank Alextrix for providing our opening and closing themes. And if you have any questions, if you want more details on a story that we touched on, if there's a story that we missed, let us know in the comments below and we'll answer it or follow up as is appropriate. And thank you for watching.